What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Insurrection Inc. podcast. We want to thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the Pseudo-Intellectual Podcast. I'm your host, Menace, along with my wonderful co-host, Jay, with Jay the Rothbardian, Peter,
Hello.
Porter, and Monty. And today we have a special guest, like the little fat,
Not so special.
like the fat friend who tags along with everything, but doesn't actually do anything with the group, Aiden, also known as the stateless capitalist.
Hi, I don't actually ride the short bus. They're lying to you.
No, you do. You do. I rode the short bus with you.
I've seen you wear the seat.
We know you ride the short bus. I'm a guard on there, remember?
Wait, Jay, in the second episode, didn't you say you wanted to abandon kids who rode the short bus?
Yep, so
You
get
said
the
they
hell out
deserve
of
to
my
be
bus.
abandoned on the side of the road.
I stuck it to your backpack.
I didn't say they deserve it. I'm saying if they misbehave, they deserve it because their parents can make another one.
Another one, but it's
Well-
gonna be even more disabled.
Well, anyway, we have a good few topics lined up for today, regarding a more serious topic about social norms, and then two less serious ones. One about a Greenland conspiracy that we've come up with that has statistical backing. But to start off,
Yes.
Jay has a very important rant to get out. He has a beer in hand, ready to start
Actually,
shouting.
I do. I
And
have
he
a
hasn't told us
Pilsner
what he's
Urquell
going to rant
tonight.
about.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have no idea what this is, so I'm not liable for anything he says.
Okay, no. This is a serious one. This is something that actually seriously annoys me about how people treat libertarians, and it's the fact that they treat us like we're all fucking corporatists, especially ANCAPs. Because a lot of the time, yeah, we're forced to come to the defense of corporations because of the outlandish shit that people say about them, but it doesn't mean we actually like corporations better than any other business, or in some cases like them at all. Like, a lot of corporations do a lot of shady shit, and we'll do things like backdoor deals with the government, or front door deals with the government for regulatory capture and shit. But they also do a lot of backdoor shit, like Amazon going and developing a cloud system for the Pentagon, Facebook helping get people in Pakistan arrested and beheaded for heresy. So they do a lot of bullshit that's fucking shady as shit. But then people never come in with legitimate critiques about them. They never come in and say any of the shit that actually matters. They just start bitching about, like, oh, they have too much money. So we're forced to come in and defend them as the only people who understand fucking economics, instead of having actual critiques for these people, like for the shit that Google does. Why does nobody ever fucking complain about Google collecting metadata and using that to give it to the fucking government?
Google is helping China enforce the social credit score thing, too.
They're also enforcing censorship with China.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If somebody came out of the gates with a critique like that, we'd be all behind them. We have no problem criticizing these people for the shitty things they do, but we just get this shit like, oh, you guys just love Jeff Bezos. Like, yeah, I want to rub his bald fucking head while I jerk myself off. I love him so
Actually,
much.
I do
slime-
have something to say about Jeff Bezos. Trump
What's
actually took those billions of dollars they were going to give to Amazon for the cloud thing off the budget. So Amazon's no longer doing that this year.
Thankful this year.
So I'm going to
Yeah.
rub Jeff Bezos' bald head while I jerk off.
You can use his bald head grease as lube.
Yes.
But no, and the things they do, like the critiques I hear about Amazon, I have a fucking economics professor saying that they don't pay anything in income taxes and completely disregards everything else that the taxes they pay. Or the reason that they don't pay income taxes is not unusual for a corporation not to pay income taxes, because what they do instead is they put all that money back into reinvesting into the company. So it's still going and ending up benefiting the consumer. I agree, nobody should be paying an income tax, but it's not necessarily a bad thing that these companies pay an income tax. So they never critique any of the actual things that are wrong with these fucking companies, and that annoys the shit out of me that we get this streak as like corporatists when that's the complete fucking opposite of what we advocate.
It's either corporatists or teenagers. it's either corporatists or edgy teenagers.
Well, if you go to
Exactly.
Instagram, the latter isn't that wrong.
Yeah, it's
People need to take accounting classes. That's all. Maybe take an accounting class, take an economics class. I mean, at least be educated on what happens. Not
And not that
just
economics class that
believe
your
the
local
media.
high school provides. Those economics classes teach you nothing.
Hell, I wouldn't
Can
even think
confirm.
ones are still enough.
can confirm. I'm in one right now. So
as an economics major, I can tell you straight up, don't go in economics for college either, because all they're going to do is teach you how to be a good corporatist. Like, what the fuck is this? That economics is one of the only majors I can think about. I've been saying this so much recently. It's one of the only majors I can think about where all your professors are going to teach you to shit on the thing that you're studying. How many physics teachers tell you that, oh yeah, the laws of physics, yeah, they're absolute, except when they're not.
Yeah, they're
Like,
not
you-
real.
They're not real, much like Greenland. But in economics, they'll tell you the shit like, oh yeah, under these conditions, capitalism works. But if we don't have these miraculous conditions, so capitalism
There's
is
so
it's
many
good.
externalities.
Yeah,
Oh boy.
It's good, but it's so flawed. We need the government to come in and step in and regulate this shit. Like these fucking bureaucrats with random ass law degrees know jack shit about how an economy works. It
Market
annoys the
failures.
It annoys the shit out of me.
Externalities, no.
The externalities, the corporations. What about the corporations? What if there's a recession? Ignoring the business cycle. And it's just like, what other major is going to teach you to hate what you're studying?
I'm also an econ major, and Jay and Menace specifically wake up every Monday and Wednesday morning to see my rants in the group
Oh, it's
chat.
great.
Yeah,
It's
I
all
do
whatever
too.
my
It's-
econ
it's
professors
You
great.
had a
say.
very good one today.
Wait, they happen every
This
week?
morning was
This
great.
the first one I've seen.
Oh yeah, pretty much every Monday and Wednesday, because that's when I have my.
That's
econ
going to be a
class.
weekly routine thing that I post about now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because
I don't really have I have micro, but those are just principles because I'm a business major, so I don't got to deal with all of this stuff that you guys are dealing with.
I just teach
No,
myself
I'm in-
online. It's pretty easy.
I'm in the
Yeah,
upper
same.
level. I'm in the upper level economics classes because I'm almost graduated. Thank fuck. And
Yeah,
it just does
does
not
that-
get better.
For those who aren't going to be economics majors, there is a good YouTube channel called Economics Explained that puts it in layman's terms and explains everything very well. That's what I've been using to learn economics. I highly recommend checking them out. Although the person who actually runs the channel is a Keynesian, but he does have a very well-rounded view of all economic systems. So if
Oh.
you want to get a good look at that, I highly
There's
recommend
also
it.
always Mises.org, of course.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I hate to sound like
Yeah,
a
if you want to
stereotype,
be
but
Austrian.
No,
Mises,
that's
Mises.org
fair, that's
really
fine.
does
Mises-
teach you so much. And for
Yeah,
free.
Mises is a whole lot better. Yeah, for free
You
too.
Yeah,
can get all that
yeah.
shit for free, but you got to pay like $300 for Das Kapital.
But some small-brained people like me don't have the attention span to read academic essays about the economy and Austrian economics. So I
It's
got
not even,
to
no, Mises Wire has pretty layman essays on there. Not even essays.
Yeah, they have podcasts as well. They have videos you can watch, like lectures. Those ones are pretty easy. I might be doing something and then I put on a lecture. It's pretty interesting, but eventually
the-
autoplay takes you to Fox News.
The Human Action podcast and the Economics for Entrepreneurs podcast are both really good from Mises.org.
And Mises Wire is really good. I'm subscribed to their newsletter, so I get it in my email. Really
Yeah,
good
of course.
articles. Like a few weeks ago, there was one about like why primitivism would actually be a catastrophe for people, and it does a pretty good job of
Cringe.
it does a pretty good job of explaining like the
cringe
tragedy of the
primitivism.
commons and like what happens without property rights and how humans in primitive societies actually were worse for their environments than we were in industrial societies.
You guys
Like
just
how-
are Ted pilled.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just not.
No, what's gonna make me TED pilled and make me go build a TED shack is dealing with idiots on Instagram all the time. That's what's gonna make me go build a
Exactly.
TED shack.
Yeah, Menace.
Listen, man. Listen, man. You just don't understand. It's a lifestyle.
No, it's just bad. I'd rather prefer transhumanist land. It would be much better than Ampram land, trust me.
Well, both
I
of them.
don't know, man. I mean, if you like a woman with a bush, then Anne Primaland is for you. I personally don't, but I mean, the option is there.
Yeah, it's true.
Very, very dystopian in both ways. Much like Greenland, actually. Is
Are we
very
are we going into
yeah.
Greenland for the first one?
Yeah, that was a perfect-
Greenland is a communist utopia.
Greenland's
It
not
is.
real.
It is. It's not real because the government, they censor all the statistics. That's why you never get any stats from Greenland. It's clear that
Oh, there he goes.
No,
yeah, I know. It's clear that there's the Greenland government's after me. That's why I had to mute myself. They came in. Okay, but anyways, it's clear that they censor statistics. They have a 70% income taxes. All the houses are color coded based on classes. Like, it's crazy. It's a communist utopia.
Wait, no. Also, do you
That's
guys know that
Greenland.
70% of the landmass disappears most of the time? So it's not as big as it actually is on the map.
yeah, it's just not there. It doesn't
not
exist. It doesn't exist. That's what we're saying. Like, there's the two theories.
It's in the
That it's
void.
either a communist dystopia that hides all of its information. That's why you go look at any map that has statistics on it, and there's always no data on Greenland. Much like there's no data on Somaliland or Somalia, which are failed states. It just
Or
doesn't.
South Sudan.
South Sudan is another
Or
example.
Wisconsin.
Hey!
Wisconsin.
I can tell you so much
Wisconsin?
about
You mean
Wisconsin.
the
Oh yeah,
voids?
buddy, you can tell them a whole lot
Avoid-
about Wisconsin. Eh?
Okay, look. Wyoming doesn't exist. That's the only state that doesn't exist is Wyoming.
Oh, let me
Wyoming's
right
not
past you
real
there. Tell me
either.
about let me
Okay,
tell you about
okay.
Wisconsin. Okay.
All right, but anyway, Greenland, right? So back to
Yeah,
that.
it's either dystopian communist hellhole that's like 70% income tax, because like Peter was saying, or it just flat out doesn't exist. Like every single map has the size of it wrong, so we actually don't know what it truly looks like because they're made up. Nobody can have a general consensus of what the shape is. So I'm convinced that it just doesn't exist. Genuinely, I make jokes about all the time that things just don't exist when they obviously do. Greenland, on the other hand, is a perfect example of something that may or may not actually exist.
The Mercator projection is a communist cover-up.
But
Exactly.
have you ever been to Greenland? Have you ever met anyone who's from Greenland?
Yeah,
There's like
what are the-
15,000 people that supposedly live there. So
like, what do you even call people who live in Greenland? Greenlandians? That's such a fake
Danish.
name.
communists?
Commies. Non-existent, void-worshipping commies. That's what they are.
Wait, you said there was some statistical backing to this. Is there any more other than the tax rates that you mentioned?
The statistical backing was the fact that there's no data from there.
Oh, okay.
And so it's more of a lack
statistics.
of statistics.
Yeah.
But also, if you think about it, how big is Denmark as a country? You know, right? How big is Denmark?
There's a question that Denmark doesn't even exist.
No, but Denmark's real. You know, my dad's been to Denmark. It's real. But Denmark
you
is not a
sound-
very big.
Danish every time you try to make the TH sound.
It's because my dad's Dutch.
Same
But shut the fuck up. I will go to South Carolina and beat your ass. Fucking ultimate frisbee
Come here.
player looking ass. You're gonna do throw frisbee
Only
at
if you
me?
look me in the eye when you do it.
Jesus Christ. No, but okay, so Denmark is not a very big country at all. So, and Denmark owns Greenland, supposedly. Now, Greenland is supposed to have this giant landmass. So you would think that maybe Denmark is trying to increase their landmass. You know, it's some sort of colonial endeavor, but Denmark can't colonize another country because they fucking suck. Even the Swedish are better than the Danish. So obviously, Denmark has an incentive to lie about the land they own.
Yeah, it's much like Vinland, that
Oh.
supposed Viking colony that might have happened. It's just all legend and myth and fairy tale from the Viking times. Same with
Well,
Greenland
there is
now.
a thing though. Denmark and Canada, we have this little feud. There's this tiny island that every year Denmark invades. They put their flag, and then Canada invades it and puts their flag. Also, I did some research. The actual income tax in Greenland is 44%. Just to correct myself, I don't want to put any misinformation out. Apparently, the
basically
70%.
You're putting misinformation out by saying Greenland is real.
That's
all I'm
true.
hearing is that island that you're talking about. That doesn't sound like it's part of Greenland.
It's just open
No,
ocean.
no,
Either
it's
that.
the one Denmark and Canada keep wanting to fight. It's this tiny island.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like Greenland.
But that's part of their
So-
charade.
So what I'm hearing is it's either open ocean or it's literally just a void.
I'm willing to
it's
accept
just-
either one.
Possible
it's
that it's
just
a void.
Empty.
Well, this island, Denmark and Green. No, it's actually Denmark's secret alien base because the Denmarkians, like, they spawn out of Greenland and they invade that island.
Did you say Denmarkian?
And Canada
Bro, it's
has to take
Danish.
the island
They're
back.
just Danes. bro.
Denmark.
Like the
No,
fucking
they're
pastry,
Denmarkians,
Peter.
okay? I will call them Denmarkians.
Denmarkian.
I hope we have some Danish people maybe listening. Are any of the 4 fans Danish? That'd be
No,
great to know.
18% of our audience is Brazilian for some reason.
It's Dobby, bro.
Yeah, it's Dobby and his entire family.
Every time I look at the numbers, there are only 2 countries that are like en masse listening to us, and that's the United States and Brazil. So we have, at least,
getting the word out. It's
no,
awesome.
we have at least like 2 other Brazilian listeners.
Brazilian does have a growing.
Oh, yeah.
That is true, but at the same time, I don't like how Portuguese sounds. So I don't want them listening.
Well, Anglo Libertarian liked my meme about the podcast a couple days ago, so I know he sees it. We got to get our UK viewership up.
Hey, that's better than
Yeah,
nothing.
the Canadians do.
I'll tell Boogaloo Brit to start plugging your podcast, even if he doesn't listen to it.
That.
We're just
But,
gonna call out all the British people we know.
So that's like 3.
Yeah, like-
Frame, Boogaloo Brit, agoraphobic agorist, and
Agoraphobic.
That's it. These 3
that's all I
people.
know.
That's
That's all
3.
I know.
Yeah.
Well,
I
blood
mean, that's
revolutions technically count.
Oh, and then there's
Oh
me.
yeah, You're not British.
Yeah, you're Canadian. Shut up.
Yeah, I know, but I watched the podcast, so
You should be annexed, honestly.
For real. 1812 has never stopped.
I'm anti-war except for invading Canada.
Yeah, let me send that photo of the opening scene from Fallout 1 where two guys in power armor are like shooting a Canadian in the head.
Based.
Oh, that's not very nice, eh?
Okay.
It's not very nice to be
Take
saying
that
that
back.
Greenland is real.
Can you mute
Stop
yourself
lying.
again?
Well, at least we have
Greenland
a picture
is
proof
real.
of this. But Greenland is real. Well, Israel's not a legitimate state either, so you're just backing up our case more.
Yeah.
Well, I guess so. Yeah, I can see Greenland is real. They don't exist.
No,
Exactly.
Israel exists. It's just illegitimate.
No, it doesn't exist either. It's a void. Like Greenland.
Israel is illegitimate, like the children I have in other countries.
Oh.
Oh, so you abandoned them too?
No. I didn't abandon them. Okay, it's called raw dogging their mothers while they're here, and then never talking to their mothers again. So I'm assuming that I might have some.
Yeah, Jay has it for tourists. His
Welcome to the Right Wing Degeneracy podcast.
Yeah. Would it really be right wing since he's doing it to foreigners? I feel like that's kind of more left wing.
No,
I don't know. The right wing loves bombing.
Jay's
if you look at
goals.
it, if you look at it, like the right wing in this country tends to be more imperialistic outwards, and the left wing is more imperialistic
gotcha.
inwards.
So you're more of just
Jay
colonizing
was
it.
carrying on the white man's burden.
Yeah, he's colonizing the foreign woman. That's how it works.
It's a Kalergi plan. Come on, it's literally a Jew doing it.
Look, life imitates art, dude. Life imitates art. That's all I'm saying. Well, I
Wait,
feel
so
like
are you saying that me having sex with tourists is art?
well,
Yes.
if memes are of an art form, yes.
Yeah.
Everything is an art form if you squint hard enough.
Me having sex with tourists is postmodern art. You just wouldn't understand it. You're
Yeah,
not cultured
post
enough.
modern, but yeah.
Nah, it's just regular postmodern.
That's what I tell them when they see the camera in the corner. It was too many episodes that I behaved. I have to go.
That violates. Backlash.
This violates no terms of
Good
services. Listen, if the front page of YouTube has like drag queens teaching children how to put on makeup, I think this will fly.
Yeah, but that's the agenda. You
If
could
our
say that's a
podcast
social
ever
norm.
gets
even.
popular,
This is the agenda.
Take
How is
it
this
off
not the
YouTube.
agenda?
Well, I mean, I guess it is, but like, it's just a matter of shaping social norms, which is a perfect unflawless segue. Wait, no, unflawless. Yeah,
No,
flawless.
Shut up.
Perfect.
Unflawless has flaws.
well, now it's unflawless.
Shut up. Good segue.
Double
into
plus
the-
ungood.
It's a good segue into like the more serious topic that I wanted to bring up, and I've been thinking about this topic for a hot minute. And as these guys know, I have expressed multiple times about how I go on these like madman rants to myself. Like I'll pace around my room like freaking out like some Greek philosopher.
I've been there
waving
for
my
one.
hands around. Yeah, he's been there for one. Jay's been there for one. And just waving my hands around, talking to myself out loud, ranting, or just trying to make either personal or legitimate breakthroughs in like my personal philosophic thought. And I've been thinking a lot more about social norms and the way they affect our society. And I've come to the conclusion, which it should be obvious, but it took me like months to actually reach this point without reading anything else, that people tend to follow social norms better than they follow laws.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which obviously is evident. For whatever reason, I couldn't come to that conclusion sooner because I'm an idiot. But
No shit.
social norms and changing them, which wouldn't be too difficult, especially coming from a libertarian standpoint, since most people tend to agree with at least the cult or the more social side of libertarianism. It would be probably the root goal of both achieving liberty in the libertarian sense and even agorism. Because at least if the social norm is to participate in a counter economics, even if it's not drugs, just anything that goes against the state and count in the form of counter economics, like buying black market toothpaste or something.
I just thought of something that I had to keep my mouth shut about.
No, go ahead.
No.
No, go
No,
ahead.
that
Don't
bad.
ever.
Yeah, come on.
No.
Is it that bad?
Do it.
Censor
Say
yourself.
it.
You know what it is.
Say it.
Okay, I'm gonna have to censor this part.
The P words?
Oh my god, of course.
Of course.
No.
Why would I ever-
I'm
come
censoring this
on.
one. I'm censoring this one.
Yeah,
That's
that's
okay.
yeah. You better.
Yeah,
Oh my
please.
But no, I wanted to bring that up because it's a very important topic that I don't think is really touched on, at least on Politigram. I'm sure some libertarian intellectuals actually talk about this stuff. But I just wanted to see like what your guys' opinion on that would be, and how well you might think that it would work in achieving a more libertarian society.
Well, yeah, I think that the fact that people follow social norms more than they follow laws is kind of reflective of the I say too much, is reflective
As the editor,
of-
yes, you do.
Stop interrupting me and I'll say it less.
Shut the fuck up.
It's reflective of that saying that politics is downstream from culture. Like the culture comes first, and also if we can change social norms, then that implies that
Oh, there it goes again.
if we can change social norms, that implies that we can change the political situation without actually having to engage in politics. If that affects what laws people follow anyway, or what they consider to be other people's rights, like what's inviolable and what's proper conduct, then I think the social norms have to come first. So I think Menace is right about that.
Yeah, and this is something that you, Monty, and I discussed in Daggerism when I brought up
Right.
we were talking about the de facto versus de jure nullification, and like how changing the culture can even lead to the laws being changed to, less restrictive laws or even abolition of certain laws. And
Right, like the changing of the laws is a ratification after the fact of a change that's already happened in society.
Yeah, no, as libertarians, it's very important for us to be trying to influence the social norms and try and influence the culture. Because the facts are that this country was founded on very, very different cultural norms and very different societal norms. Like, Pete Quinones talked about this in one of his episodes of Free Man Beyond the Wall, where back in the days of the colonists, the redcoats basically had like no legal authority in the colonies because nobody regarded them as authority. You could tell a cop to fuck off back then when they tried to stop you and they couldn't do shit. Whereas now, you tell a cop to fuck off, you might get shot, and everybody's going to say they deserved it.
Yeah, and this also ties into to education. It mostly relies on just educating people about not necessarily the principles of liberty, because that doesn't apply to everybody, but basically how to make yourself more free, because that does at least appeal to most people, even if it's not based on like pure libertarian principles or whatever. People generally do want to have more freedom, like greater degrees of freedom in their life, and through education we can tell them how to do that. And it's not just counter economics; it's also political. But Monty emphasizes the importance of education a lot, and what he talks about, like with us amongst ourselves. So, Monty, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay,
He's like, oh
so
yes, it's
here-
important, but nope.
I'll fill the void here. So an example of, I think a good example is, especially with like traffic, the norms of traffic. Because like, for example, a buddy of mine was driving me home, and this road was like a 55. It was like a highway, but speed limit was 55, and we bended this corner, and all of a sudden, the entire traffic, like all traffic, just went 70 immediately. It was the weirdest thing.
Oh yeah, whenever the passing lanes come up on the road, everybody starts speeding up.
Well, it's a
Like,
one-lane road, too.
one-lane road,
Yeah.
and then it changes to 2 lanes, and then everybody starts going like 20 above the speed limit. This is in kilometers, so that's not really a big deal. So, and it's like, what the hell? We were going 70, now everyone's going 90. This is in kilometers, so that's about.
I
like
mean, people do
maybe
that in miles per hour
40.
too. So I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we're just.
I've
cooler
seen
'cause
cops
we
going
go
40
faster.
above me.
Oh my god.
I've seen a cop. Oh, okay. So let me just go on a rant. I seen this a couple days ago. This
no.
guy. So he goes on the wrong side of the road, and then he just stops his car by like a traffic light, like it's almost in the middle of the intersection on the wrong side of the road. And then all of a sudden he gets in his car, and then he turns on his lights, and then he like turns around in the middle of the road, and he does a left turn. He's literally in the wrong side of the road. He's doing a left turn on a red light, Like, what the hell is this guy doing?
I once saw a cop do turn on his sirens to cross the double yellow just to get into a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot, and then he turned them off.
You're lying.
I know. I'm telling you the god honest truth.
I once saw a cop spin out in the rain around a turn one time.
Oof.
He just whipped his car around this whole area.
Oh god, I would love to see that. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Menace said not all cops are bad. So
Listen, man. They can go listen to that episode 2, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go hear my reasoning.
Security
Monty
guards are better.
Monty has notified us that he can say something about regarding social norms, but so go ahead, Monty.
Well, I'll just. I wasn't really paying attention, so. But
Well,
Monty, because of your soft voice, we forgive you.
I can pick it up from here if that's necessary.
well, I do think that I'll just agree. I might be rehashing what everyone said, but it is extremely important. Like, you do need a like-minded group of people. You need that social cohesion and social.
So would you say
trust
we need a? Would you say we need a homogenous people?
of ideas?
Add on that, Monty?
Yeah, more like political homogeny, but yes.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Maybe
Come on, say it out already.
no women.
We'll consider them like foreigners and tourists, like Jay does.
And there goes our women listeners, the whole one.
Monty, adding on to your
Monty's girlfriend.
Yeah.
This is why I believe in like small countries, small groups, because like big nations like the United States, it just doesn't work. There's too many different ideas, too many different people. It creates all of this thing. This is why I support like these smaller groups and countries. Like why ideally, like when I was a Marxist, I supported like basically dividing the United States into like thousands of different small nations based on counties. Like each
330
county
million
would
would
have
roughly-
like
We've
a
talked about
very
this in the-
direct democracy that would select the people.
Did
and
you
that
just
will
say
work a
direct
lot better.
democracy?
I just want to point out that the Canadian
Similar
is
to
making plans
direct.
for the United States government.
Well, we talked
That's not
about
a
this in the
plot.
decentralization episode, didn't we? The Baggers.
Yeah, we did. We did.
Well, the
So Menace. Oh, good.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that. I've said that for a lot. I definitely don't support a New Yorker like the debates are on right now, and just more East Coast or West Coast people trying to make laws that affect me.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's offsetting of
They have
costs.
totally
Like,
different
an ideal
cultures.
democracy wouldn't allow this offsetting of costs. Like, let's say somebody wants to import 10,000 refugees to one area. Like, that shouldn't be allowed to happen unless it's to their own area and was voted in by the people. Like,
Yeah, it's like
it shouldn't be like somebody from the New York is telling somebody from Wisconsin in that
Wisconsin's not real.
10,000 refugees.
especially we mentioned this before, the politician who flew over one of the western states and didn't know what the squares of land were. Like, they were farmland.
Yeah.
They just have no connection to us.
I'm gonna come
What
out
are
and say
those
this right
squares?
now. The only the only democracy anyone should ever support is capitalism.
Based.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
voting with the
Ludwig von
dollar.
Mises said
Yes,
that. I mean, he didn't say that directly, but he said something similar to that.
Democratic capitalism. It's just capitalism.
I don't know
That one
about
is
the
good.
Democratic part. That's kind of cringe.
yeah.
Actually, that could be a pretty good way of
Monarch-
well, no,
Cap-
not everyone has a right necessarily. Like, you have to vote with
Yeah.
your dollars, and
Oh yeah.
not everyone.
Yeah, I don't have a right to
It's
vote
more
in Germany.
merit based. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Menace.
Well, considering we're talking about democratic
damn it, Porter.
capitalism now, which is a decent is a decent way to not a decent way, but a kind of a more contemporary way to call it anarcho-capitalism. I
Actually,
wanna
wait,
talk
no,
about the
Menace,
social-
hold on. Before we continue, I would like to state on the record, Porter is not based.
Hey, that's not fair.
Porter is
not
not
fair.
You
based.
What
can't
if he
say
is
that without any
based?
context.
Porter is not based.
Jay, based is your subjective opinion. He might be
No,
based in
no,
someone else's
no,
opinion.
we
I
are not getting
subjectively
into that.
value myself as
Yeah,
well.
that's a topic for another episode.
Jay, I'm gonna say the P word. Okay.
Don't say
No,
that.
Swear to
no,
God.
I
No.
don't even know what he's talking about.
Okay.
Yeah,
Anyway,
we know.
back to what we were talking about. I wanted to go over what social norms would need to be changed for an anarcho-capitalist society to truly, or to work better. Maybe not work perfectly, but definitely work better. And of course, then after that, I'll give some examples of social norms actually changing our society today and throughout history. And I'm getting most of what I'm talking about and most of the ideas I'm working off of from a website or from an article on Stanford News. Believe it or not, we'll put a link in the description. One of the things they point out is changing the social norm around whistleblowing, not only public and like political whistleblowing, but also private whistleblowing. Because of course, in an anarcho-capitalist society, there wouldn't be a state to regulate economies and stuff like that. So things could be done. The likelihood of these things, like having horrible working conditions or poisoning the water supply, just for the heck of it, it likely wouldn't happen because there's no economic incentive for companies to do that. But in the off chance that something does happen, a form of like private whistleblowing would need to be encouraged in order to make these things are kept in check, because it is possible that these things are covered up by these corporations or companies or whatever. So that's definitely one of the things. The stigma behind whistleblowing is that it's well, looked down upon by most of society. Of course, we'll have people like us on here praising Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, and people like them all the time. But a lot of people don't see it that way because, of course, they're so subservient to the state that they see any attack against it as wrong.
Yeah, I mean, a buddy of mine absolutely hates Edward Snowden. You know, and like I even asked him why. He's just like, look at his smug little face. I'm like, what the hell?
He's a man that is harmed. He
I'm
is broken.
sorry.
He's trapped in Russia. He's in like one of the worst places to be.
Yeah.
Like, of course, he's gonna look awful. I feel bad for the guy.
Meanwhile,
But,
Assange is like on his deathbed still. He's
Yeah,
still like
yeah.
really sick.
Yeah, and
being-
Chelsea Manning's still locked up, isn't she?
Yeah,
she's
because
back.
she refused
Yeah.
to testify. Yeah, she refused to testify against Assange.
Okay, but do we care about her?
Okay,
Pointed
that's
out some
getting
very
censored.
good stuff.
That's getting censored.
Um, but back to topic and changing social norms. Speaking of which, Monty, this article points out some different ways that social norms are changed. Of course, it happens. Sometimes it happens naturally. Like for example, the ideas behind gay marriage, and now more recently, more prevalently over time, marijuana legalization. These things are changing. Of course, more and more people accept it as okay. Then, of course, then it becomes legalized, or rather decriminalized at least. But these things that happen in the states that have already legalized it and such. So those ways happen naturally. Of course, the state also has its ways of changing social norms through gradual implication of laws and regulations to the point where people just see it as normal. Like there's so many people that see the war on drugs as just normal because they were born into the world that has that. So of course they see it that way. And of course the same way can be said about like quote unquote brainwashing people through public education, which technically it is brainwashing, but it's not in the same way like you control every single thought that they have. It's more just you change the way they think about things. You change their perception based on the social norms they're exposed to.
It's a subtle thing. The textbooks are the worst things
It
ever.
is. Exactly. They change it every year. They change it just a little bit every year to send it the gradual implication of laws to change social norms. They change these textbooks just a little bit every year. So it's unnoticeable, but over time it has major lasting effects as we've seen, obviously. And of course the final way this article, and also that I've come to the conclusion of on my own, states that social norms can be changed like being spearheaded by like big influential figures like celebrities
Like Mike Bloomberg.
like Mike Bloomberg.
Yes.
Bro,
Right.
fuck him.
He's the only Democrat.
He's the only Democrat, bro.
The only Democrat.
He will
But-
get it done as well.
Yeah, he will change these social norms. But other people like Martin Luther King and Gandhi, and those are the ones the article mentions, but I can't really think of any more off the top of my head. If you have any more, please let me know.
The founding fathers.
Talking to
I don't
y'all.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Not that influential if you really think about it, though.
Thomas Paine was.
But stuff like that are like leaders like those spearhead different things to change social norms in order to, and then in turn to change the legal terms as well. And of course, other examples of this have more of an agorist example of this, of laws just being ignored in favor of having social norms be stronger. In France, in 1626, dueling was outlawed.
Really?
But dueling didn't stop until 1715 because it was just part of the culture. It was part of it was a social norm, and people who, even though they knew that they were obliged by or obligated by law to stop duels when they happened, nobody did it because it was a social norm. It didn't
Agris
end
dueling.
until King Louis the 14th. It didn't end until he died in 1715, and I guess they cracked down on it more. Basically, just went out of style. I guess, unfortunately.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of
When is trial by combat going back? I want to
That's
see
what I
that
wanna
come
know.
back.
Like
Well,
I
it
had
was.
you want to talk about a perfect business idea, right? Private prisons. Instead of having private prisons and use them as like probably slave labor, like just get the ones that are on death row, legitimately, like they deserve to be on death row, and just have them fight in a gladiator ring and have people
Bro.
come pay to watch.
The
That
winner,
would
what do you do with the
make
winner?
so much money.
The winner,
Like,
they just
the
get to
ticket?
live. They get prizes or something.
he gets a
It's
presidential
entertainment.
pardon.
No,
They
they
get
get
Teddy Bear before he gets put to
Yeah.
death.
I mean, like if they wouldn't be like executed at some point, they'd just continue to fight until they die. It's just what it would work to be entertainers. And
Yeah.
of course, they get fed well if they win, if they get prizes, get a nicer dwelling or something. I don't know. That's what I thought. I was like, I think it would be a pretty cool idea. I popped it up to my economics teacher in high school, and he thought it was a pretty funny idea. Didn't publicly support it, but I feel like deep down inside he supports it. Another thing that I think, another social norm that was prevalent in a country, particularly Greece, in 2011, was tax evasion, where 30% of the population that paid taxes also evaded taxes at the same time because it
Based.
was just a social norm
Sounds pretty Greek, yeah.
in Greece. But of course, that's compared to the 7% of people committing tax evasion in the UK, where it's not the same social norm. So, of course, if we could change the social norm for everyone to commit tax evasion and tax fraud, that'd be pretty based and probably wouldn't be hard to do. We just got to convince people that they can't stop all of us.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
are rookie numbers. We gotta get those numbers up.
Exactly. That's what I'm
Mm.
saying. That's what I'm
Get
saying.
up to like 25% tax evasion.
Bro,
50%.
Bro, the state would collapse after enough people just stop.
The state would collapse if 5% of people in the USA stop paying their income tax.
Yeah.
Look, I'll be one of
Maybe
them.
like 10%.
No, the numbers are 5%. If 5% of the people who are currently paying their FICA stop paying, then obviously like 5% already doesn't pay or something like that, but 5% more stop paying, then the system will collapse.
Or maybe it would start collapsing. I'm not that optimistic. They could just tax us by printing more money because, like, think of it. Printing more money is the way they tax you. Even if you don't pay your taxes, you're still taxed by the inflation rate they create because the money you have is being devalued. So unless it's constantly being loaned out and like brought back with interest higher than inflation, they're still able to tax you.
It's just kind of how China debases its currencies in order to keep its products cheap for American
Yeah.
consumers. They just kind of tax their people more to
Mhm.
technically kind of subsidize their products to make them cheaper. It's like a weird way of doing it, but they do
Yeah,
it.
I think Erwin Schiff put the number at
So
75%. If we got tax compliance down to 75%, the federal government would basically cease to exist.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. 25% or would already start
I
collapsing.
think that's an achievable goal.
But that was the whole federal government. I think Jay's talking about FICA specifically, which would be like the
Federal income
the
tax.
Social Security and Medicare, that kind of
Yeah.
systems, the things we already have unfunded liabilities for. It would be impossible to cover those pretty much immediately if just 5% more people stop paying them.
Yeah, you're right about
Yeah,
that.
we spend over $1 trillion a year on welfare spending.
That's insane.
It's like 1.2, 1.3 trillion. I'm gonna pull it up right
And
now,
then
actually.
back to the social norms changing on kind of a smaller scale but broader scope. One of my biggest intellectual influences was Community Technology by Carl Hess. It's a 100-page book. It's pretty short and very difficult to find. I looked for it for like several months before I actually found it and read it over this past summer. And he talks about how in this neighborhood in the outskirts of Washington, D.C., they basically formed a self-sufficient community for a little under 10 years, like 5 to 10 years, and it eventually failed. But he offers some good lessons of like why it worked for a while and why it eventually failed. And what made it work for a while was a tight knit community that just made it unnecessary to rely on state services for a while. They didn't have any formal police officers patrolling the neighborhood. They didn't have any formal influence from the city government at all. They just kind of banded together, not in like a anarcho-communist setting. It was very much market-based, and Hess talks about that in the book as well. But it was all about, you know, local production and trading with your neighbors, and just that's something that everyone can do is go talk to your neighbor. Like there are a lot of people who don't even know who they live next to.
I hate all of my neighbors.
Yeah, like
they're
Jay.
I don't like
Shit,
most
me.
of mine.
Obviously, some people are just assholes, and it's hard to get to know them. But
Yeah,
I
I live in
guarantee
an asshole
there are
neighborhood.
people near you. I guarantee you there are people near you who are nice enough that you can get to know them and find something in common with them. And even if it's just like, you know, cooking out on the back porch every once in a while, or whatever the equivalent of that is if you live in an apartment or like an urban setting, you know, just get to know people so that you can help each other in times of need. And, you know, that also facilitates trade under the table. Like a 15-year-old kid mowing his elderly neighbor's lawn on a Saturday or something like that.
Yeah, for like
That's
20
That's
bucks.
what I
or
do,
something.
except it's not.
That's gray market agorism if he gets paid $15 for it. That's
Oh, yeah.
$15 of untaxable trade.
Oh, so I actually
It's better
get
than
paid
nothing.
more.
Actually, I think
Sometimes like
that's-
$20 per driveway.
I don't think that's. I think that's legal though. Like I think it's over $20. You have to start. You know,
Filing your taxes.
filing
for
Okay, he
it.
mows
revenue.
5 lawns. He's still not getting taxed for it.
But,
Yeah.
quick
So you
aside,
get
quick
the
aside.
point.
I
Yeah, I
checked
get
I
that.
checked the debt clock for the United States, and I have
Oh,
the
God.
exact numbers for how much we're spending. So just a quick thing to scare everybody: 1.269 trillion gets spent on Medicare and Medicaid. 1.06 trillion gets spent on Social Security. 681 billion gets spent on the defense and wars. 301 billion gets spent on income security. 291 billion gets spent on federal pensions, and 153 billion gets spent on food and agriculture subsidies. And there's about 86 billion going to classified programs. So,
That's our NSA agent
See-
spying on us right now.
And the worst one there is Social Security. God,
Yeah, that's like
Yep. it's the
holy.
worst one. Social
and
Security.
Ponzi scheme.
That's not even it. There's a whole section here where $134 billion is labeled under waste, fraud, and
Yep.
abuse.
This law.
That's almost just as
The
much
money
as food and
disappeared.
agriculture.
yeah, that much is going to. And my econ professor the other day said that the federal deficit doesn't matter.
What?
Wow.
Oh,
No, I
yeah.
seen an article about that. I posted it. It was on Instagram. Some guy like
I think it was Paul Krugman.
social leftist or something. He literally posted an article. I don't remember his app, but he posted one saying like why the U.S. deficit doesn't matter. It was,
Yeah,
from,
when
like, some
when it
mainstream
seemed like
thing.
Hillary was winning, Paul Krugman wrote an article that said deficits don't matter, and then when Trump won, he wrote an article that said deficits matter again.
just because big scary orange man gets power,
Yes,
bad things, things I
And-
liked are
and
now
that's
bad.
the great thing about libertarians. We don't give a shit who's in office. People are still dying, and we're still spending money on these Ponzi schemes.
See, libertarians are the real
Fiscal conservatives, social
Well,
liberals.
well no, well, what the word I'm looking for
The
is like
libertarians are the real.
we don't
libertarians.
discriminate.
It's that simple.
We don't discriminate. We don't discriminate. We hate everybody.
I mean, Monty discriminates, but that's different.
That's more of a personal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a personal thing. It's
Yeah.
fine. It's fine to have personal things, but like politically, we don't discriminate.
Yeah. Anyway, Porter, keep going with what you were saying.
Yeah. So he also Hess
The fuck
also,
do I discriminate against?
That's a late
Woman.
response.
Women.
Thank you for that timing, Monty.
You discriminate against women.
So
All right.
Hess also
Anyway,
identifies the kind of social norms and attitudes that ended up making that neighborhood experiment a failure in the end after 5 or 7 years. And it was mostly a reliance or a reverting to a reliance on government welfare. It was people didn't want to work. And instead, since they were in such close proximity to DC, it was very easy to go back on like welfare from the federal government instead of actually, engaging in the local production and trade and trying to make your own life better through your own hard work. And there was also a massive crime and theft problem. Like people would break into other people's homes and just steal all the valuable shit in there. And that's why Hess and his wife eventually moved out.
Well, I guess we hope for anarcho-capitalism.
We also had to. What was that?
That gives me hope.
Yeah. So Hess says that we mostly have to eliminate that ideology of dependence, basically. Obviously we believe in a division of labor in the market, like not total self-sufficiency, but you have to be willing to put in the work and earn what you get instead of just accepting it from other people for no reason. So that's another social norm that we have to change in order to get closer to a libertarian society.
Yeah, and that's a very hard one because if anybody here has read some Charles Murray or like heard about what he's talked about, he has a book basically about the welfare trap, which explains why it's so hard for people to get off welfare because of how it completely distorts the incentive structure. Like his example, he makes an allegory where if the government tried to make a program to help people quit smoking, where they offer you I think it was like in the 90s, he said like a $1,000 grant if you manage to quit smoking. And so now you have people that, yeah, they have an incentive to quit smoking. They're going to get paid. But what happens is, well, what are going to be your standards? Because you can't pay everybody who smokes to quit. Because what if they just started smoking a month ago and it's very easy versus someone who started 10 months ago or 10 years ago? You need to set these standards. So you have to arbitrarily set a standard, but then you create this incentive for somebody to keep smoking until they get to that point. If you set it too early, then it becomes too easy for someone to go and quit, or to keep going until they quit. Because what happens is, well, if you set it for 6 months, well, I'll just start smoking for 6 months, and the cost of smoking is going to be outweighed by me getting that $1,000. So they have to set the standard, and then what happens is, well, now suddenly you have a lot of people who are going to pick up smoking just because they're going to get this money for this. So, and you see the same thing with welfare, where it's like, you have to set a standard, so there has to be a certain wage that you're making under to get welfare. But then what they set is too close to that wage, so why would you work extra so you can make that money when you can make a little bit less while doing nothing? So it becomes very hard for people to get off of this cycle of welfare because of the dependency that's created by the incentive structures.
Yeah, they've made welfare just basically a career.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Keep
you get
popping out,
stuck in it and it goes in a loop.
It's something I want to build off that, even though we kind of moved away from the social norm thing. I think we probably said it, most of what we could say about it. I do want to quickly say I will link 2 articles about social norms in the description if you're more interested in reading in detail about it. But back to the thing about welfare, I was talking with someone the other day who was a communist, more of a Trotskyist, and one of the things he was asking is if everyone's needs were met, say through welfare, wouldn't that be more of a free market? Wouldn't that provide more incentive for people to do productive things if all their needs are met? Of course,
That's kind of what
he didn't
Andrew
answer
Yang
that.
talked about too with the UBI.
Yeah, it's kind of what he talked about.
Yang
But
gang.
of course, if the idea is that free market obviously is not influenced by any unnatural thing, and of course the government being unnatural because it's enforced, at least the state as we know it is enforced. So it's unnatural, and of course regulation is unnatural. So as a regulation, the state is unnatural. Welfare is also unnatural. So if incentive is natural, and then it's being influenced by unnatural things, then the incentive to be naturally more innovative and yeah,
You lost me.
in my head I'm making sense.
I think you lost yourself
Yeah,
too.
no, yeah, he
Hold
kind
on.
of does make sense though.
It
Like-
makes sense, but just the amount of times he said natural and unnatural just
Yeah.
sort of mixed up in my head.
Okay, so yeah,
I
when
can kinda
unnatural
carry this.
things mess with natural processes, bad things happen.
Okay, yes.
It's the same thing with synthetic drugs. You take synthetic drugs compared to the natural versions of them, you're going to get messed up. Like K2, synthetic weed, that messes you up. It's worse. It's arguably worse than
Doesn't
meth.
that have rat poison?
Probably.
I think so.
But it's arguably worse than meth. I've seen people on it. It's terrifying. So you don't want to do it. I'd rather you do the natural stuff. If obviously the economy doesn't work very well, the natural free market economic system that obviously I just said occurs naturally, being influenced by government and regulation, something that's unnatural, obviously has bad consequences. Is what we have today with all the Keynesian policies that have messed everything up with the healthcare and education and sectors. So the same thing happens with welfare on an individual level. If you have that unnatural thing providing your goods, your needs, you're not going to have that natural incentive anymore. It's the same thing that happens on a large scale with the economy. And what was the other thing I gave an example of? I don't even remember at this point. I said it 30 seconds ago. Don't remember. But it's the same thing with
The old age is getting to you.
It's
He's
already
ranting.
there.
the
Yeah,
corn
I'm ranting. This is what happens in my rants. I forget everything.
All the corn products, man.
You're
Yeah, no,
literally
he
witnessing a
clearly
rant
has
now.
dementia.
Sorry, man. So we gotta take you old back, old Yeller style.
Yes, sorry, Menace, you're spending your life in.
That'll
It's on
do,
the
pig.
rabbit
That'll
sword.
do.
Jay, where did Menace go? He went up to the farm.
No,
The farm.
not the farm.
You went up to the retirement home.
Menace is running with the butterflies and the dogs.
Oh my god.
But yeah, like the same thing that happens with the economy, the natural free market process being influenced by unnatural government regulations, it messes everything up. Same thing happens on the individual level with unnatural things like welfare messing with the natural incentive process that humans have naturally. Does that make more sense than whatever mess I went through
Yes.
the first time?
Yeah,
Okay,
well,
awesome.
What you're describing. What you're describing is something that Franz Oppenheimer, he was a sociologist.
I love that, man.
like a century and a half ago. He described two means of humans satisfying their desires. One was the political means, and one was the economic means. And the difference he distinguished was the political means uses force to appropriate the products of the labor of others, and the economic means uses your own labor and exchanging the product of your own labor. And that's a pretty simple distinction, but that's exactly what you're describing. And it has different effects depending on which means you use.
Shout out to Anatomy of the State.
Yeah, Rothbard mentions it in there. He cites that
Yeah.
a lot. Oppenheimer was a big influence on Rothbard's thought.
Yeah.
So the moral of the story is come smoke a bowl with me.
Natural, not K2, natural marijuana, not the synthetic
Natural
stuff.
stuff. Don't worry. Don't worry. We won't be doing bath salts yet. That's for Austin.
No.
Well, I think it's a good point. The good point to cut it off. Does anyone else have anything to say before?
I have a black pill. I'm sorry. I'm going to black pill you again, Jay. I'm sorry.
Ooh.
I know
Oh,
it keeps
no.
happening.
Ooh. Okay.
2024 debt clock prediction of national debt being $30 trillion.
Those
Oh,
are
that's
really
right.
good numbers. Let's
Higher
get them
by
up.
That is 88,000 per citizen, 226,000 taxpayer. Oh, and here's the best part. So right now, the total debt, which I think isn't that just everybody's debt combined with federal debt,
Probably.
or is that just okay? So total debt right now is $75 trillion. 2024, $91
How-
trillion
How
of
did
total
it
debt.
get to 75 trillion?
Well,
I
for
remember
spending
it
in war.
being like 19 trillion a few years ago.
Welfare spending
that
in
in
war.
layman's
70
terms.
something trillion is like the combination of federal debt mixed in with all the other debt the United States has, both private and public.
Yeah, because every state also has debt.
Yeah, that's true.
And then, of course, every individual, or not every individual, but a
municipalities
significant portion of the
too,
population
like
has
cities.
debt as well.
It's basically the entire United States debt, totaling up every single municipality, state, county, whatever, town,
And individual, I believe.
and yeah, probably individual as well. Yeah, still $91 trillion. Man, I just come on, just bring the economic collapse. Just kill the
Canada
dollar already.
owns
We don't
about
need it anymore.
51
To
trillion.
put that in layman's terms, we're fucked.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
Just-
guys are even more
yeah.
screwed.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
the
anyway,
only
oh yeah, finish up.
The only way you'd be able to fix that is at this point is go through Austria means, and that's not fun.
Yeah.
You all know
Yeah.
what that stuff is? I assume y'all do.
Yeah, austerity. Yeah. Anyway, so we're running up on an hour, Menace. You want to take this shit show train out of the station?
All right, choo choo boys, let's get out of here. Thank you for everyone. Our Instagram pages will be linked in the description along with those articles I mentioned, and a
Mhm.
link on Amazon because we did happen to find the book. What is it? Community Technology by Carl Hess. That will
Yeah.
also be linked in the description if you're interested in reading. Once again, I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of the Pseudo Intellectual Insurrection Inc. podcast. This has been the main host for the episode, Menace, along with Jay, Monty, Porter, Peter, and of course, this definitely special guest, Aiden.
And slide into my DMs if you're a tourist who wants a child.
All right,
All right, see you guys.